Well, for this story, we have to go back in time to 1860. And it's a time when this area would have been a lot rougher, and justice was equally rough. And our story is about Paul Magay, who was a Potawatomi Indian native, who has a rather uncertain temper. He got into a fight with his brother and killed him. One brother of his walked in front of a Great Western train and was killed. Another brother fell in the river and drowned. So the family had a lot of bad luck, and it certainly wasn't helped by him killing his brother. So he decided he better hightail it out of the area, and he stayed away for a couple of years, thinking then, oh, I'll be safe. Everybody will have forgotten what happened. I'll come back, and, you know, I'm back where my old stomping ground, so to speak. Well, he came back, and right away, being a quarrelsome type, a big strapping fellow, he got into an argument with another native about who could sing a song better, and killed him. Well, this time he got caught. He was arrested, and he was brought in for trial. Well, you can imagine a native, 1860, it was going to be pretty rough justice. Father Fair, who was the priest at St. Joseph's Church, took him under his wing, more or less, and he tried to communicate with him. It would have been very difficult because, of course, he wasn't speaking English, and I don't believe that Father Fair could speak Potawatomi, or whatever the native tongue is, but they communicated with gestures and so on. And somehow, Paul Magay made it clear that all his earthly possessions, which consisted of probably a blanket and a knife, should be passed on to his wife, and that he wanted to be buried in the ground, perhaps like a white man, perhaps as a mark of respect. Well, he was brought out here, he was found guilty, he was tried, found guilty, and a scaffolding was built from this second window right here, extended out, because in those days, a public hanging was something that they wanted to do to impress upon everyone that it was a bad thing that had happened. So they wanted a crowd to come around and watch, if you can imagine. I recall looking this up and reading in one of the early Chatham papers about a woman who was retiring from Eaton's when it was downtown in Chatham. She was an older woman, and so she was, as a young girl, lived in a house here, I don't think one of these because they look too new, but she lived here, and so she had a perfect view of this hanging. She witnessed it as a young girl, and she said it was one of the worst things she'd ever seen in her life. She never forgot it. So Paul Magay was hung. He was taken down, and he was buried in the churchyard on Cross Street behind St. Joseph's Church. Where there's currently a schoolyard, that was a cemetery. Now, at that time as well, and for many years, it wasn't something new, but medical students were interested in getting access to humans' bodies so that they could do experimentation, so they could learn more about how the human body worked. But people didn't really accept this. They didn't understand what they were doing, and they thought it was an invasion of the sacredness of the body. But Sheriff Mercer, who had been in charge of this case, didn't care about Paul Magay. And so when the medical students came and said, could we dig him up? Indian Sam is how he was termed in the paper. They said fine. He didn't care. And so they did. He was a big, tall, strapping fellow. They would have been able to open him up, study his body, and learn from it. But this was not what Paul Magay wanted. He wanted to be buried. And so it's said that the spirit of Paul Magay can be seen sometimes in Tecumseh Park, sometimes in the Cross Street area where the church is, and sometimes over here where he was originally hung. Now, we heard from an assistant Crown Attorney once who had offices right here. And he said that he heard a commotion outside one night when he was working late. And he was used to kids playing around, making noise. And by this point, he'd learned to distinguish between something that was normal and something that was a little irregular. So he came over to the window and he thought he saw something, but he wasn't sure what it was. We've also learned that in this courtyard here, we've been told by people who've worked here, they've tried to grow things in there, plants, just regular plants to brighten it up a little. Nothing grows. Nothing will grow there. And actually, one of the neat things that has happened when we've done these tours, completely unexpected to us, is some of the workers have actually dressed in white sheets and stood up at the window when we've been here in the dark. I guess not tonight.